Thanks for joining the stream. Today we're going to continue going over my top 50 anime and manga of all time. Um, we took 1 week off for the holidays, so I hope everyone had a good holiday. I was out of town for about a week, and so it's nice to be back. And I haven't actually uploaded anything in like about a week at this point, which feels really weird, but it was a good little break. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video on Tokyo Godfathers, and then also had a good end to the 2025. I'm so appreciative of everyone. One of my big goals for 2026 to continue streaming more. And so the kind of goal this year is to try to stream almost every single week, and then maybe even down the road stream a couple times a week. I'm getting over a cold still, so if you hear that in my voice, that's what's going on. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. I know normally I stream on Saturdays. Today is Sunday, but that's how the schedule worked out. So, but yeah, in just a minute here, we'll dive into my top. We'll do numbers 30 through 21 today for the stream, and continue going over what my favorite anime are of all time. Have you guys been watching anything new so far, or is anything kind of at the end of the year caught your eye? I'm really excited that 100 Meters is out on Netflix, so other people are able to see it. I watched it in theaters when it was here for like a couple of days, and so it's been fun to see that video I made a couple months ago all of a sudden getting a bunch more views from new people. I really like your Haikyuu videos. It really motivates me. Thank you. I appreciate you watching them. The Haikyuu videos are really I love making them. I mean, that's why I make so many, is because I feel like there's so much to say about the series, and the series itself just like lends itself to motivation and talking about kind of generally positive things, maybe in a way that like other series don't. So it's always really fun to make Haikyuu videos, and I really appreciate that you like them. And thanks for joining the stream. And so looks like we can probably jump right into the top 30 through 21. I'll go back maybe at the end of the video, and we can kind of discuss the previous 20 that we've discussed. But I feel like we might as well just dive right in. And if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll kind of jumpstart it. As always, the kind of criteria here is a mix of personal, nostalgia and kind of how it's affected me, and then also like me trying to look at it a little more objectively, so it's always a mix of that. And I'll let you know if some series it's both the anime and manga I've read, some series it's just manga, some series it's just anime. 100 Meters is a great movie. I felt like it was a compressed version of Running with the Wind. Yeah, that's a great shout, and I do feel that way. Like if you like Run with the Wind, you'll love 100 Meters, and vice versa. And so, yeah, totally agree with that. And yeah, it is just like a condensed, and it's a little more focused on, like Run with the Wind has this like focus on people who don't really have any interest in running and kind of find that, versus 100 Meters is like really consolidated on like eventually elite runners, especially by the end. But yeah, so good. I really like how you talk about the writing of the characters. Thanks. Yeah, I really love going in depth on specific characters. It's really fun to do with Haikyuu, and it's just like every character. It's like if there's a character that I don't quite get, I'm like, I just need to make a video on them, and by the end of making that video, I will get them. Like that's what happened with Sakusa in that video specifically. But yeah, we can pull up number 30 here and kind of dive right in. So number 30, I have The Apothecary Diaries. This is a relatively new series. I believe it started airing maybe at the end of 2023. Second season aired this last year. Maybe it was early 24 when it started. But The Apothecary Diaries is kind of this semi-episodic story about Mao Mao as she's taken to the royal capital, I guess, in the beginning, and as she kind of works her way up and works through different situations that happen. And so she isn't herself an apothecary necessarily, but her dad was, and so she does have training there. And so she works these odd jobs in the castle, and there's also just a ton of romantic subtext going on between her and Jinchi, who's the other character on the cover, who kind of oversees her and has his secrets of his own. What's really fun about this anime, I think, is the political, you know, the political drama that's going on, and how many characters are revealing their motivations, or you know, just like every little thing that many of these characters do are agonized over in excruciating detail, and their appearances matter so much. And so it just makes the drama of this series really fun. The tone is amazing as well. It's really, really funny. And then there's also some really intricate mysteries throughout. And so it's a series that really kind of snuck up on me that it would be this high. But I definitely think it is. Run with the Wind is a great anime. Would you like to make a video of Run with the Wind for a specific character? That would be definitely interesting. I did make one video on Run with the Wind about a year and a half ago about the series in its entirety. So you should go check that out if you haven't. And then it would be interesting to make one on a specific character. I don't know if there's as much of an appetite for it. My one worry is that if I get too specific on a more niche series, that like it just won't have a chance to reach a bigger audience. But if I rewatch the series, I mean, I would love to talk about it in depth more. So that definitely could be something that happens. And if people are interested, let me know. Low-key Apothecary reminded me of Hyoka. Yeah, I think there is definitely very similar vibes between those two series, which are both fantastic. And yeah, I think the Apothecary Diaries, yeah, I love all the characters. I love the mysteries. I love how funny it is. And then also it gets really emotional at times. And some of the stories of some of the side characters that you meet, and kind of the horrors that they've had to face living in the capital, is just like really, really well done. And so I think it's just like a great example of a series that it has this just amazing ability to connect different narrative threads together in ways that like I wasn't necessarily expecting. And so yeah, I think it's really, really a fantastic series. Season 2 is amazing. I think the romance subtext of it gets really good in season 2, and there's some really hilarious moments. I think if anyone's gotten to the cave scene, is just like a really great example of this storytelling working on all levels. Yeah, the depth of the stakes and characters, yeah, it's just so good. Like it's such a brutal circumstance for so many of these people. I mean, you're talking about characters who all the men have to be eunuchs if they're going to live there, and then the scrutiny that all the girls go through. It's kind of this brutal circumstance but it's just their everyday lives as well, and so there's a lot of humor found within it. A lot of Mao Mao is also really funny in how practical she is, and yet how she always is like jumping to conclusions, and even though she said she doesn't, I like just find that kind of inherent contradiction of her character really funny. Character from Run with the Wind, I think Prince would be a nice one to talk about. You really know how to show the best of characters from a series. Yeah, Prince he would be great to talk about. He is such an amazing character from that show, and just like one of the standouts for sure. But yeah, Run with the Wind is amazing. I love both of the first two seasons equally. It's willing to change up its formula a little bit, so it never feels too repetitive, which sometimes episodic series can when they start to go over the 25 episode mark. But it also avoids getting too big picture, to turning into something it's not. Like, you still feel like you're watching Apothecary Diaries. So I think it's amazing, and I strongly recommend anyone check it out if you haven't yet. So moving to number 29, we've got Death Parade. This is, a short seasonal anime from, I think, 2015, maybe 2016. And it only got one season. That definitely, I would love it if it somehow was one of those series that randomly got picked up for another, but it's I think highly unlikely because it's not based on any source material, um, at least that I'm aware of. But Death Parade is a series about characters who they when they die they show up to this bar and they compete in bar games to decide where they're going to go in the afterlife. So their true character gets revealed in the bar games, and the first one is the bar games also have like a little bit of a twist to them. So in the first episode you see these two characters show up, they don't realize that they're dead, right? And then they're playing darts, and then every time they hit one of the spots it hurts them physically, or I think it hurts the other person physically, and so then you just see the type of person that they are within the game, and they don't fully understand, like what they're being tested on, and so it's this really cool exploration about human character and kind of how we reveal our truth under these kind of dire circumstances. But what takes so it's like a really fun concept, right? Like you're like, oh, that sounds great. Like every episode, new people show up, new bar game to be played. That's going to reveal who these people are, and are they good? Are they bad? And each episode is this opportunity to explore a different idea about humanity. But taking it a step further is the main character, the bartender, who you see on this poster here, who's facing the other way, whose name I'm blanking right now. And him and the other people who work there add a little bit more depth to the series that it might not necessarily have. And I think that's kind of what elevates it from a series that probably would just be like, oh, that was a fun seasonal show, to something that I've been thinking about for 10 years at this point. And it's that extra depth of character that I think is really, really good. And the season does end off in a way where you're like, man, they could really expand this to crazy levels, and like it would be awesome if they built a season 2. They definitely left the door open for more, and that never got explored. But when I think back to the series, I'm not bothered by that. I just think like the series is just fantastic. Never watched Death Parade. I'm going to have to check it out. You definitely should. Definitely. It's only like 12 or 13 episodes, so it's a quick watch, and it's super worth it. Isn't that the anime from the same writing of Death Note? I don't think so. I don't know. Because I think this is an anime only, so I would be surprised if the mangaka behind Death Note, which I know is a duo, I believe, if they did it as well. Maybe they did. I'm not 100% certain. But if it is, that would be amazing, because I mean it's super well done, and it's just like each episode, the show is the epitome of something that just like gives you something to think about. Every episode you watch, there's an interesting commentary about like, oh, should that person be sentenced to, like life in hell forever, or the other way around, and is this an ethical way, or like is this actually their character? Like, are people revealed in their most desperate, darkest, and confusing moments or not? And so like some of these questions are just really compelling. The production is very solid. Like it's not out of this world animation, but it's a little bit better than maybe your average seasonal show, I would say. So I really appreciate the aesthetic of it. It also has a banger opening song that you all should check out, and that is definitely like in contrast to the tone of the series. It's this like really upbeat, like jazzy tune, and then you like get to the show. It's really dark, like really dreary at times, but still super good. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for joining me in 2026. Hopefully we'll be doing more streams and throughout the year, and then of course continuing to make video essays. So I appreciate you being here and joining me for the third episode of my top 50 anime and manga. It took a week off, but we're back now, and it feels good. So yeah, Death Parade. Maybe it's like if we ever did get a second season and it was to the same quality, it would shoot up the rankings. If we got a little more conclusivity, I guess, if that's a word, to some of the characters, the reoccurring characters, I think that could have elevated this series, because there's times where you're watching it where you're like, this is as good as anything I've ever seen. But it just doesn't quite have the length to compete with some of the series for me that are in the top 20. And so yeah, but I think it's really, really fantastic. Can we talk about Haikyuu instead? Well, one day one of these numbers will be Haikyuu, so you got to wait till we get to that one. But of course, I can always talk IQ all day. Um, but yeah, Death Parade I think is fantastic. Just I think it's always been the series that I say is like, when someone's like, oh, what's an underrated anime, that I always throw Death Parade out there. It's like the first thing I think of. I'm like, oh, Death Parade is underrated. But I actually don't even know if that's really true. I feel like anyone who kind of was around in 2015, 2016, who was watching seasonal anime then, like everyone kind of knew of Death Parade and how good it was. And so for, I don't know if enough time has passed for people to really forget it, but this is always the one I think of, whether or not it totally deserves it or not. But yeah, I think Death Parade is fantastic, and everyone should check it out. And honestly, like, I'm tempted to rewatch it and make a video on it because it's that good. Let's talk about the new upcoming Haikyuu movie. Uh, well, I am very excited about it. The new trailer, I think, for the new Haikyuu movie looked fantastic. And thankfully, I mean, it's best case scenario right from them doing the films, which is that they're only adapting the combo Medai match. They're not going to adapt any material after that. And then also, we are going to get Bokuto in the OVA episodes, much like we got Fukuro Dani versus Nekuma in OVA episodes in between seasons 3 and 4. So that's pretty exciting. And then, yeah, Haikyuu is top 15 or something. It is, it is probably going to show up on the list pretty high. But you just have to wait and find out. Moving to 28, The Devil is a Part-Timer. This is a interesting one. Also came out, I think, 2013 maybe. It's like at the beginning of Isekai's absolute explosion in anime. And so Devil is a Part-Timer. I'm not totally obsessed with isekai. It's not my favorite genre. ReZero was on here earlier, and this literally might be the only other like pure isekai that how we think of it post 2010. But The Devil is a Part-Timer is one of my favorite series. I think it's just absolutely hilarious. For those of you who don't know, it follows the story of the devil as he comes to Earth to, he gets kind of ran out of his kingdom. He comes to Earth, and for his plan to overtake the world, he starts working part-time at McDonald's. And so he's working part-time at a fast food chain, and so he just works his way up there, and then you're kind of like, oh, is he is he actually as bad as he thinks he is? And so just like a ton of humor comes up where, it's the story of a character who's supposed to be the most menacing being you could ever imagine. And he's just like not menacing, and he's actually hilarious. And all of his companions are, as they like navigate what it's like working in just like lower class modern society, and so that's really, really compelling. I think the humor is incredible in the series, and it's also really interesting that it had a season 1 back in the day, and that's really where I fell in love with the series. I never went on to read the source material. I just rewatched season 1 a ton of times, and then it never had a season 2, so eventually they randomly announced that it was getting one, and that was, I think, in maybe 2022. And so in season 2, for a lot of people, it didn't like it quite as much, and maybe it's not quite to the same level of rewatchability for me, but I actually still really enjoyed it because I think the character writing is also fantastic. And so I think 28's a pretty good place for it. It's not in the top half of this list, but it's close to it. It's just like one of those comfort shows for me that I think is really, really good. And I think there is some depth to it. There is something going on with all of the characters beyond just like the funny twist on isekai tropes. Like there is this kind of willingness to explore why the devil would be willing to work at a fast food chain, and kind of the characters' internal desires. I think it's there. It's not like they overly explore things, but it's enough that with all of the humor of the show and the crazy, kind of way into the series, I think it works really well. Wait, are we going to get Hinata versus Korai in the new movie? The Devil is a Part-Timer, such a funny anime. Yeah, it is hilarious. And yes, the new movie will be those two playing against each other. And the match between Bokuto and Kiryu is the OVA episodes, so it'll be probably 2 to 3 episodes would be my guess. Be awesome if it was 4. Don't forget to mention that while he's working a part-time job, there's a hero trying to eliminate him at the same time. Yeah, exactly. So the hero Amelia, who's the redhead on the front, like their kind of battles and the kind of schemes that she comes up with, right, to like try to see him as this like terrible person is just like super good. And then you learn a little bit more about what's going on back home, especially in the second season, that I think works really well. So it feels really fresh in a genre to me that feels tired most of the time. Like most of the time you're going through the isekai beats and you're like, I would rather this just be a fantasy story that isn't self-referential, right? Like the reason I sometimes struggle with isekai is because you have these people who go to these new settings and they understand the tropes that they are partaking in. And it's kind of this, part of the meta modernism trend, right? Of people being super self-aware about the trends that they're within. And the isekai genre is just like totally enveloped in that, and that's not my favorite thing typically, but I think here it earns the kind of self-awareness because it inverts it with him being the devil. And so it's that he comes to our world, and I find that a little more compelling than someone going to another world and knowing all of the tropes, and it just kind of ends up souring to me usually like the emotion of a story. But here it's used for laughs, and I love that. And so I think it's a really clever take on the isekai genre. It's not groundbreaking. It's not like no one's ever thought of anything like this before, but I think it's executed really, really well. I kind of hated when Chihiro was mixed into the celestial stuff and got powers sort of removed, the character regular normal human beings can relate to. I do kind of agree with that, and that is part of like where I think a lot of people's frustration came from the story. But I just love all the characters so much that I didn't totally mind it, and maybe if the series wasn't so just like funny in the moment, that I would have been harsher on it. But I totally get where you're coming from with that critique. And so, yeah, that's number 28. I think Devil Part-Timer is fantastic. And I enjoy it, even though I don't enjoy the isekai genre that much typically. So moving to 27, we have Blue Box, and this is both the anime and the manga. I've got an anime picture here, but I actually fell in love with the story through the manga. And I've made a couple of videos about Blue Box, and I'm sure as season 2 comes out, I'll make more in the future. I'm a little wary of making newer manga material just because, of copyright issues that I've had in the past. But it's not impossible if people are interested in me talking about where the story is at currently, because I think it's fantastic. But Blue Box is a sports romance series that follows Taiki, who's a badminton player, and he's interested in in the basketball player, and I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. All everyone's names as I'm talking about these series is just like flying out of my mind. Um, so if you know her name, comment it, and I'll be like, oh my gosh. But basically, it blends sports anime and romance anime just really, really well done. It takes all of the tropes that you know and love from those stories and brings them together. So in the romance side of things, you have this close proximity trope where she comes and, at the end of the first episode, it turns out that she has to live with him so she can stay in Japan and play basketball. So now he gets to see her all the time, but then there's weird social dynamics with, trying to flirt and hit on someone who you live with. And so that's really fantastic. There's a love triangle element, which was the last video I made on Blue Box, which I think is a good example of a love triangle working, which I know not everyone agrees with me for Blue Box, but for me, I think it's the case, because I think there is a legitimate chance for every single player to end up that way. And then you also have the sports side of things, where it's this personal growth and this kind of development and the goal to make it to nationals, the heartbreak of, setbacks during that, and kind of the work ethic that they have and how it kind of mirrors the romance. I think this series blends it perfectly. And then the anime is really cute. It has very solid production, all of the designs, just like, oh, it's very fitting for it. But the manga really is another level. I think the way that it focuses on faces and the way that the author captures faces is just brilliant, and there's so much focus on it in the manga. There's so many panels of just reaction shots where you're actually meant to for you to figure out exactly how the character feels in that moment. It's not really, as straightforward and as, familiar as all of the tropes feel. There's a lot of individual moments where you're not totally sure exactly how a character feels, and so you have to really do a lot of interpretation, especially earlier in the story, and so I just love that, and I think the manga is just fantastic. And so I'm not 100% caught up to the last couple chapters, but I think I'm like 5 or 6 chapters behind where the story's at, and it's definitely a slow burn, the romantic elements, but they do get paid off, which is really good. And I know it's probably coming to an end semi soon, which is really exciting, but also sad because it's just amazing. And I first started reading this story. I think I first started reading it maybe 30 chapters had come out. And so it was just kind of like still this new series that was out. And I read all of it in like a night or a day and a half or something. And it's just like, there's an addictive quality to Blue Box that I just really love. Blue Box is really good. I really liked it. Yeah, glad you enjoyed it. I think for most sports anime fans, as long as you don't completely detest the romance genre, you'll get a lot of value out of this. And it's kind of like, I think it's the blending of genres that makes it so good. Again, it's not the first sports romance to ever exist or anything like that. And it's not necessarily groundbreaking in any way, but it just is different enough that I think people who are really deep into sports or really deep into the romance genres can get value out of Blue Box. But if you look at any of the individual pieces, you're not like, oh wow, that's like the most sophisticated take on the genre. Chinatsu, that's her name. Oh my gosh, I kept like, it was on the tip of my tongue. Chinatsu, yeah. So she's incredible, and Hina's the other. And so they're kind of the main 3. But there's the side cast is all fantastic. And I think, yeah, the manga just has this addictive quality where it's just like you want to binge through it so fast. And that's how I felt, where it's like you just can't get chapters enough. And then it's like sometimes I try to let the chapters build up, because when I do read a chapter, it's like, oh my gosh, I need the next chapter right now. And so sometimes I like to read them in chunks, and that's often how I do a lot of manga anyways. I normally don't keep up with a series. Like if I keep up with a series that's weekly, it'll only be for like a month that I do it, and then I kind of fall off, and then I end up binging to catch up. Um, but yeah, Blue Box is amazing. I think it is just like a great example of yeah, how to blend genres together and do it in a way that is not deconstructive of those genres, but really celebratory. It really celebrates all of the great things that sports and romance are about, and it when you put them side by side, some interesting things happen, and you kind of come out with some interesting takeaways. I think season 2 is coming out this year. Can't wait for it. I love the entire cast, and I'm excited to see how the manga ends, which could definitely be this year. So that's number 27. 26 is Madoka Magica. So this is, I think it's a 2011 anime. And, it's another genre that I normally am not diving into a lot. And it kind of is, in the way that Blue Box is this, celebrating the genres that it has. Madoka Magica is challenging the genre of magical girls. And so, I don't have a ton of depth of knowledge in terms of like how that genre, the history of that genre and everything, right? Like I've seen a little Sailor Moon, I've seen a couple shows here and there, but it's not something that I'm super knowledgeable about. But Madoka Magica is such a way for people who maybe view that genre through probably unfair lens to kind of experience what it can do. And so this is a magical girl show that seems really light, really cheery, and then very quickly turns into this dark and disturbing exploration of what it would really mean to get your wish and to be a magical girl. And so it is a really fantastic series that I had always been interested in watching because I think it was very highly acclaimed when it came out, and it still is, of course. And so I watched it. Now it's probably 5 or 6 years ago, but it was, not when it first came out. And I was totally blown away by it. It's also really short. Like it's, if you don't count the movies that are afterwards, it's like, 12 episodes or something like that. But it has such efficiency in its storytelling. And so it really is just like this dark exploration of challenges for these girls to go through, where they think that they're going to do this awesome, fun thing. Like, how fun would it be to be a magical girl? And then to take the realistic side of that and really explore the harrowing side of everything, and situations get really dark really fast. I think it's the 3rd episode that has the big heel turn for the series, where you're like, oh, this is where we're going. And then I always think of the climax of the series, and I just, without any spoilers, it is the scope of it and the emotion of it, and it's so dark and it's so brutal, but amazing. And this is a series, for it to be 26 is actually kind of shocking to me. I always had this a lot higher, and to the point that, like, as I'm talking about it, I'm like, I need to rewatch this because I feel like it's better than 26, but maybe some things that are a little fresher in my mind have kind of beaten it out. For a long time it was closer to the top 15, but it is, if you're kind of coming from a place where you're like, oh, I have never really watched magical girl shows, this I don't think is a representation of the tone that they all are, but it can be a way to maybe try and give them a chance. And at least that's how I viewed it when I went into it, and I was just blown away by it. It's amazing, and I think the real thing is beyond the darkness of it, beyond the scale of it and the emotion, is the depth of the characters and this commentary on dreams and like what it means to have a dream. I want to keep watching, but I have volleyball practice. Well, thanks so much for watching this far, and I'll be streaming a lot more now, so you can come in then and have a good volleyball practice. Have a good practice. And what position do you play if you haven't left yet? But for Madoka Magica, it's just a fantastic show, and it is the commentary on dreams, like I was saying, that I think is just adds an extra layer of depth to the show that goes beyond challenging a genre. And of course, it's interesting coming to that kind of perspective when you're not fully in tune with all of the inner workings of the genre. But I don't think that really matters because the storytelling quality and the quality of the story is so well done, that it is one of those shows that you definitely point to when you say, oh, this is kind of a moment for the genre of magical girls, even if you haven't necessarily watched it all. And so yeah, I think Madoka Magica is phenomenal. And yeah, moving to if you haven't seen it, like, it's so short, you got to check it out. This really is like a classic level show, I feel like. Number 25 is Claymore, and I've got the manga here. I've never watched the anime. Claymore is Shonen Jump, kind of the darker side, and more of a seinen series, even though it technically isn't because it's published in Shonen Jump Advanced back in the day. But it's this really great dark fantasy story that has just some of the best creature designs and kind of unsettling imagery that I feel like I've ever seen. And so you can't really talk about Claymore without talking about it being split up into two halves, kind of. So the manga follows one storyline, and then that storyline gets completely changed and it goes in a very different direction for the second half. And I went into it and kind of with that knowledge and the knowledge that people didn't like the second half as much. And this is kind of you're just following these badass women who are like fighting monsters, becoming monsters. It's really great. And it's very dark, and kind of was, I think the anime was kind of regarded as one of the edgy series that you should be watching in the early 2010s, when it's like it came out in the 2000s. And time has kind of maybe removed that claim from it in kind of a good way, because there's a lot of sincerity and a lot going on here that is above the station of, oh, here's a good edgy dark series to watch or read. And granted, I haven't watched it and I've only read it, and the manga is just, the artwork is unbelievable, that it's like I couldn't imagine watching the anime over reading it. But I would say that while I think that it has a decent ending, and the ending maybe feels a little bit abrupt, and there's kind of this big reveal at the end of the story that some of your perceptions about the world building is a little bit different than it was previously. And it feels like, well, if you're going to reveal that, they reveal it and don't really do much with it. And I would have liked to get into that, and it would have felt better. But the kind of emotions of the story and the way that these characters fight these monsters is just like so primally interesting that I'm just so invested in Claymore, kind of from start to finish. And that the mid-series kind of twist, and something happens that totally sends everything in a different direction. While the direction it goes in ultimately is a little bit weaker, it's kind of worth it for how good that mid-series climax is. And so I totally think everyone should read Claymore. If you like fantasy and dark fantasy, like if you are like me, I read a lot of fantasy novels as well. I totally think Claymore would be right up your alley. It's the type of series that, if you've read Berserk and you want something of that ilk, it's not quite as dark as Berserk, but it's kind of that setting and vibe and kind of the fantasiness of Berserk, where when you go to, everyone's like, oh, Vagabond and Vinland Saga, go there next. But with those series, they're not as fantasy. Like, there's, some fantasy-ish elements, but they're really historical fiction. Claymore is that other fantasy series that I think everyone would be interested in. Hey, Dragon, is that Dragon FP? Good to see you again. Fancy catching the stream. Claymore is actually one of the first non-DBZ anime I watched, and the first manga volume I ever bought. Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. What a cool, kind of series to find so early on. That's really, really awesome. And yeah, I adore Claymore. For me specifically, the manga, I haven't, outside of seeing some clips of the anime, I haven't really watched much of it. But I just adore the manga. I definitely want to buy the whole series so I can own it physically. But yeah, I think Claymore is just amazing, and that would actually be a fun series to revisit and read on stream or something like that, because I would love to revisit it. But I also think Claymore is an underrated. If you do have, friends, I'm always thinking about like getting people into anime and manga in kind of unorthodox ways, or trying to find series that aren't the most popular thing ever. And so they can really see the depth of the genre. Like everyone has probably heard of Attack on Titan, or Hunter x Hunter, or stories like this. But if you have friends who are really into dark fantasy, and like the aesthetics that come with Claymore, the Claymore manga is just like a great place to send them, and they don't have to necessarily buy it all physically, because it's a Shonen Jump series, so you can read it online really easily. So yeah, I think Claymore is amazing. It's, I adore dark fantasy stories, and so the aesthetics of Claymore really, really take it beyond. I do think there is, like, the character work may be slightly inconsistent throughout the series. There's some characters that I like a lot more than others. It doesn't have this like breadth of deep cast that that might have elevated it higher on this list, but it's the aesthetics, it's the mood of the series, and it's the fights and things like that really, really stand out to me, and is why, and especially what happens in the middle of the series is just like, there's some devastating things that happen, and it really it really is good. So yeah, I totally recommend Claymore, and I think if you read the manga, the ending of the entire series is maybe not as bad as people say, even though, like, I still have some issues with it. Not necessarily a slam dunk, but still totally worth it to get to the end, and you'll be like, oh, I think this was very solid. Man, every time, a lot of these series that I haven't revisited in 4 or 5 years plus, I'm like, man, I need to go back and reread this or watch this, and Claymore's certainly one of them. Number 24 is a new one to the list, and maybe I'm being hasty here, but 24, Frieren Beyond Journey's End, another amazing take on the fantasy genre, where Claymore is this dark, moody fantasy series. Frieren is so much lighter and really focuses on the moment, and so I'm guessing most everyone who's watching this stream has either heard of Frieren or watched Frieren. It's been such a, over the last couple of years, I think 2023 is when it first came out, just absolutely has taken the anime community by storm, and kind of instantly cemented itself as a contender for the kind of defining anime of the 2020s, is how I view it, honestly. And especially for like defining popular anime, it feels like it's occupying a similar role that Full Metal Alchemist did, and I think there's a reason that those two are like the highest on Mal, even though that's like a kind of a surface level reading of it. But for me personally, again, I love fantasy. It's just like my favorite genre, of course. And I talked about this, and I've made one video on Frieren, and season 2 comes out, in a couple weeks here. So there's a very good chance I'll make a Frieren video by the end of the month, because, now's the perfect time to be talking about it with a new season coming out. But I really talked a lot about how time works in Frieren, and how it, so the structure of the story is that it's, the journey that you thought would happen, right? That you thought you would follow is ending at the beginning of the first episode, and then you follow this elf who lives way beyond the journeys that are normally, normally the content of these big stories. My cold's hanging on to me a little bit here. And so for Free Ren, it does have a little bit, it's not an isekai, but it does have this kind of meta modernist lens to it where it's very understanding of the tropes that it's working with. But here it totally breaks them down by refollowing them. And it makes like the fact that Free Ren has gone through the journey already in the same way that we understand the context of what these journeys take, I think gives this series its depth. Excuse me. And so for Free Ren, I think it's the exploration of time, which is what I talked about in my video on it last year, that I think really, really catches my eye. And I guess it was what I think about the series, which is one, how you think about someone you've lost and how they don't really die when you're still able to think about them, and how your relationship with people that you've lost actually does change, and they change because as you have more experiences and as you think back to them, you get these new perspectives on who that person was, and so it's this, and of course that's happening with Free Ren and Himmel throughout the series. And I think it's just like a really beautiful exploration about how you deal with the grief of losing someone, and how actually when they are gone, they still grow in your mind, and your relationship with them actually changes when you experience things differently. And so I think, yeah, Free Ren is amazing for all of those reasons. The characters are great. It plays on fantasy tropes in a way that I think is really, really sincere and profound, just like with time. And there's just so much you can talk about with Free Ren. There's a lot of really great, like the animation's amazing, the direction's amazing. Paytalk's Anime is an amazing channel who has, he talks so much about Free Ren, but a lot of his videos I think are really smart, and he tackles certain direction choices or certain, story, little nuances that kind of just sets Free Ren apart from a lot of other contemporaries. Oh man, I'd actually put Free Ren in my top 10, maybe even top 5. It certainly has a chance to rise. I think one of my favorite booktubers, Mike's book reviews, he always talks about how legacy takes time. And so I think about that as well when I'm making a ranking like this, where it's like, is Free Ren, I've only watched the series once, and there's a few other series that I watched around the same time that I actually think I prefer to it, but it's like, if Free Ren continues on the quality that it is and it goes on for a ways longer, I mean, totally, it could continue rising, and it could be, I could see it contending for top 15, top 10. Top 5's a tough spot to crack for me, but nothing's impossible, and I think Free Ren's fantastic. And 24, yeah, I feel like this is another maybe step up. As much as I love Claymore, I feel like Free Ren is a little bit of a step above Claymore overall. But yeah, I mean, if you guys aren't watching Free Ren yet, you got to get on it. It's just for like being a part of the conversation around Free Ren. I'm so excited for the weekly episodes. I know it's a bummer that the new season's a little bit shorter, but hopefully it'll be 2 cores, and maybe we'll get the next core later this year. So moving on to 23, we've got Kuroko no Basket, a fantastic sports anime. It was really fun actually revisiting my love of this series for, the first time in a while earlier this year. Kuroko is the kind of, when a lot of people who talk about sports anime and talk about, well, sports anime is like, you take shonen characters and you put them in sports situations so they have superpowers. Like Kuroko no Basket is what they're talking about. Like that's the perfect series to look to when we look at sports anime, and how anime and animation really push it, and push what's realistic and what's going on. And so, yeah, for Kuroko no Basket, we follow Kuroko, who's the sixth man of the Generation of Miracles, which was a middle school team that was so good that they just crushed everybody. And then in high school, everyone goes to a different team to see who's going to be the best. So all five of the starters, and then Kuroko. And when he goes there, he meets Kagami, our red-haired guy, who is from America and who has the, maybe the potential to be a generation of miracle, but he really needs his abilities to be brought out. And so Kuroko's this ultimate passer, and Kagami's an amazing dunker, and that's kind of the dynamic going on there. And then you follow this series as they, try to win the Winter Cup. And so it's really, really fun. I mean, the characters are all so likable. It doesn't have the realism of a Haikyuu, so there's certain intricacies to the story that, like, I don't think you can quite get as deep into. But really, over this year, I've rediscovered the series, and I've revisited a lot of the series for the first time, since pre-COVID. And for Kuroko, and that happened because I had some random shorts kind of blow up all of a sudden on it, and I was like, oh, maybe there's an appetite for this. And so I started making Kuroko videos again, and they all started doing pretty well. And so I had really a lot of fun tackling Kisei and tackling a couple of the matches. And I definitely want to make more Kuroko videos in the future. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. I think the most interesting part of this series is Kuroko's dynamic with Aomine and Kagami. And that probably would be the next video I make on it. But yeah, Kuroko's dynamic with both of them, and how Aomine is this prodigy who is so good that he falls out of love with the sport in a way, and he kind of just like floats along. And then you have a version of him that's a player who fits a very similar profile to him, and Kagami kind of challenge him. And I think that's just like really fantastic. So sports anime is amazing. These matches are so dramatic and brilliantly done. And I'm a huge basketball fan in general. And there really is, for as absurd as the story is, there is a lot of real strategies, put into the series. And I think the most obvious one that I always bring up is how one of the matches with Murasaki Bara, who's the center of the Generation of Miracles, how that mimics how the Detroit Pistons stopped the Lakers and Shaq in the 2004 finals. Like, that strategy comes up in the match in the series. So people can argue that it's just all silly fun, but there really is some cleverness and some depth, and a layer of general realism that's kind of applied underneath all of the absurdity of this series, which allows it to strike this really, really great balance. And so, yeah, Kuroko is amazing, and his character is so good, and it's so fun to see him add new moves to his game and him develop into like a legitimate good player instead of just this really, really niche kind of niche role that he fulfills throughout some of the series. And so, yeah, Kuroko no Basket is the perfect example of fun sports anime, has some depth, has a lot of absurdity. I love every part of it. And so, it's a series that maybe it's gone a little bit higher as I've revisited it earlier this year. And it's one that I hope to make a few more videos on, because, I just love talking sports anime. But it's just like so fun, and the characters are great, and the drama of things when you think about the start of the tournament when Akashi, like, in his double personality tries to, swipe at Kagami, and just like little moments like that are so overly dramatic, but so much fun. I think is just like the perfect example of just like what makes Kuroko fantastic. And so, yeah, moving to 22, so we only got a couple left, is Jujutsu Kaisen, and this is both the manga and the anime. And so, Jujutsu Kaisen, I think, is my favorite modern shonen battle anime. And I mean, that's probably become clear in some of the shorts that I've made recently, and how many videos I've made on this series. And I definitely plan to make a bunch over the next couple, next 2 months as season 3 is airing. And Jujutsu Kaisen, for it to be this high is actually crazy based on how much I enjoyed season 1, because season 1 was just like really whatever to me. And I remember watching the first episode or two with one of my good friends, and he said something that I often think back on, where he was just like, oh, this is just B shonen. And he's like, it's not terrible, but this isn't A+ shonen that we're used to, or like that we should be seeking out, I guess. And I remember like trying to disagree with him at the time, but then that really kind of, because I had heard how good Jujutsu Kaisen gets, but then like when I finished watching season 1, I was like, yeah, I mean, it kind of is, right? Like that is like a fair description of the first season. Like, I don't think it's doing anything as interesting as early Chainsaw Man, or, it's not even as refined as I think early My Hero. But with a key, caveat is that it does take off in season 2. And another part of that is actually, I think, the production of the first season of the anime of Jujutsu Kaisen is just okay. I think MAPPA has this kind of history of making mediocre first seasons when they take over a show, and then realizing that they really need to step it up, and so all of a sudden everything gets way better, and like the staff is just more accustomed to the property that they're on, and they make some slight tweaks, and then all of a sudden it really goes. I think Attack on Titan was a great example of that, how mediocre the first 12 episodes they did was, and then how good it gets by the end, and specifically the films. And so revisiting, being able to read the manga, revisiting the beginning of the story, I see I have a lot more appreciation for it, and like what it's doing, and kind of the seemingly the struggles between what Gege wants to do and kind of what a typical new shonen series would be doing. But Jujutsu Kaisen really takes off in Shibuya for me, and it gets just even better for me in the Culling Games and in the Shinjuku Showdown. I think the aesthetics of the series, the fights, the characters, and a lot of the ideas that are there and worthy of exploring. Its concepts of death and rebirth, its discussion on what it means to be the strongest, this kind of conflict between traditionalism and modernism, and then, explorations of identity. All of these things are just so prevalent in the story, but never get in the way of the action and the pace and the emotion and the darkness of the story. And so all of that I just adore about Jujutsu Kaisen. Its cast, I think, is fantastic, and it has this really interesting thing that a few series have done to me, and I kind of talked about it in my Paradox video that I made a little while back. But Jujutsu Kaisen, like, it hits you with these like situations and battles, and you're just kind of going from thing to thing to thing, and then you kind of, all of it, throughout it, it's like new characters are getting introduced, and you're kind of like, who is that? Like, what's their role in Jujutsu society? Or like, do I like them? Do I not? And then all of a sudden, by the end of a season, you look back on it and you're like, I adore these characters. Where did my love of them come from? And it just kind of comes throughout all of these different battles. And so Jujutsu Kaisen's amazing. The best battles are still yet to come, even though Shibuya Incident is just fantastic. Of course, I think the Hidden Inventory is a great example of just like Gege's writing ability distilled into a couple of episodes, with him really getting to do his thing. And so that's, I mean, there's a reason, right, why everyone loves that stretch of story. And I think it's just a good example of the quality that Gege can get when he's in his bag. There's a few things with the series that, I don't adore. And so there's a reason why it's at 22 and it's not a top 15 for how much I love so much of it and how much depth I think there is with the story. Like, there is a few issues I have with some things, a few little things about the end, a few little things about some of the transitions, things like that. And of course, the start of the story that is like fine. But but man, Jujutsu Kaisen, really when Shibuya came out, like I didn't even watch Shibuya weekly because I wasn't that into season one. And then all of a sudden I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just as good as anything as I've ever watched. And then like it just is took a hold of me in a way that it has for so many other people. And so I'm really excited to make even more videos on the series coming up. Honestly, this week there should be a series for the start of season 3 where I kind of revisit my thoughts on all of the arcs before season 3 begins. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully that should be the goals, maybe right before the new episode comes out, but it might be right after. It depends on how long it takes me to finish up this script. But yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen is just, I think, a slam dunk example of why I love modern shonen anime. I really do like the pacing of it. I like how chaotic and wild it is. The characters are amazing, right? Everyone loves Gojo. Everyone loves, the main cast. And I think there's, in a similar way that Bleach has, and in a way that I hope to explore Bleach more on a reread, I think Jujutsu Kaisen does have a lot of depth to it, and a lot of depth that people don't give it credit for. And so yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't really need an introduction. Like everyone kind of knows how great Jujutsu Kaisen is, like a lot of shows on here. But for me, it just like the action sequences and then the depth behind that is just like everything I look for in a show. And so that places it at 22. And so now for the final series for today, we'll move to 21. And we've got Death Note, which is, a really interesting one to be at 21 because, for a long time, this was just like a top 5 series for me. And so it's interesting that over the years, it's kind of fallen a little bit, and that feels harsh to me because anytime I think about the series, I'm like, it's amazing. And so, Death Note is this ultimate cat and mouse game, with just like a brilliant concept of a super genius, annoying teenager who gets the ability to kill people at will. And another super genius teenager trying to track him down. And so it's an amazing concept. It is crazy in certain ways that are just like really fun. And so I think everyone thinks the, first, 17 episodes of the series is just like razor sharp storytelling, just fantastic. There's so many twists that happen that is brilliant, and the characters and the ideas behind it, and kind of just the feeling of the series, this kind of something beyond melodrama to this kind of really dark kind of introduction to Light's philosophy, because we follow Light and he is just like this terrible person, and so I just love everything about Death Note. And yeah, it's like one of those series that when I watched it, it was like, oh yeah, this is the best thing I've ever seen. This is like, especially for a teenager watching it, you're like, this is totally changing how I feel like I should engage and interact with the world around me. Like it's like one of those like defining pieces of media that you come across, and a lot is talked about the ending. The last kind of 7 or 8 episodes. I am not as harsh on those episodes, I think, typically than other people are. I think Nier plays a really interesting, Nier and Mello play a really interesting role in the story. And I think that their kind of legacy, while not as fun and engaging as what L's is, it matters. And I think it matters to the overall ideas of the story. But even with that said, I feel like Death Note just has fallen a little bit for me in the context of other stories that I just maybe like their casts more, or I like, just certain elements of it just kind of works for me more. Not that Death Note is any worse than it was when I first watched it. It's this amazing bingeable series with just like great ideas, and it just executes everything it's trying to do really well. And so I would say this is actually another step up. This is another jump in quality from number 22 to 21, where it's just like there's not really a lot wrong with Death Note. Like there's, it's another one of those where it's like I'm trying to justify why it's 21 and not 5. But just over the years, it's kind of slipped for me. There's just other series that I find myself thinking about a lot more, or kind of being invested in more. And that's, I think, a big differentiator for me on this list. But Death Note is just, a fantastic, fantastic series. And, there's many moments that are just like some of the most iconic. You think about Light and L in the helicopter. And then, of course, the episode, with where they're out in the rain is amazing. And then you've got their tennis episode. Like there's some sports anime to this series too. And so, yeah, I think Death Note is also just like really, really evocative of a time of popular anime, which is the mid 2000s anime for the slightly more mature series that people were getting interested in. Like Death Note is that series, and the vibes of Death Note is just like what you're looking for. And it's like once you watch Death Note, at the time it's like you're searching for other series that would give you those same vibes. And so for me, it's just like, yeah, it's really evocative of the era it's from. It's still amazing. The pacing of it is so good. And even on rewatch, when you come across some of the silliness of it in the ways that like certain characters, certain reveals happen and you're like, there's no way he could figure that out. Or like, there's like little things like that, especially as you get older, or you've seen it like 4 or 5 times and you're like, I actually, like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It never really matters because the pacing of the story is so well done that you're just moving from thing to thing. It almost has like a Christopher Nolan type pacing where you're like, this doesn't make sense, but it does not matter, because I'm into the feeling and the emotion of the story, and then when the twists are paid off, it works. And so, yeah, I think Death Note is, it's amazing. And, it's been, I think it's been a little while since I've rewatched it. Not like too long, but I think I watched it maybe in 2020 or 2021, somewhere in there. And it's so short that it is, rewatchable. Like, 26 episodes feels like nothing when you're dealing with the One Pieces of the world. But yeah, I think it's really a fantastic series. It's another one that feels weird that it's not higher. But then when we meet next week and we talk about the next 10, I'm going to be like, well, there's a reason that this one is in the top 20. So we're really getting to heavy hitters now. And so, yeah, that's it for today's stream. If you want me to, I can go over the entire list real quick, or we can, wait till next week or the final time to do like a full recap on the top 50, but I could go over some of them if some people in here haven't seen the first 2 streams, or if you have any questions for me, you could throw them in the chat. If not, I'll probably head out. And it was a nice, good stream to be back. I've lost my voice a little bit, which makes sense, but we had to get through it sometime. So thanks again for sticking around with me, entering 2026. It's kind of nice that my first video of this year is a stream, and then, shorts and video essays will start picking back up tomorrow. And yeah, be on the lookout. I think my next video is going to be kind of revisiting the first 2 seasons of Jujutsu Kaisen. And then, after that, there'll be more Haikyuu videos, more free run videos. I definitely want to make one for the new season. Similarly with Jujutsu Kaisen, I probably will make a couple of videos on it throughout. It's just too good not to talk about, right? And then, of course, be on the lookout for streams. Should be every weekend on Saturday or Sunday. I do want to come up with a little bit more of a consistent schedule. And if I start mixing in two streams a week, I'll probably start posting schedules to the community tab on here. And I'm still looking forward to maybe figuring out how to read some stuff. I know later this month, I'm hoping to share a short story that I've written with y'all, which is like kind of almost a novella length, or, kind of like a really short novella for a story that I've been working on. And so I might be, posting that online, and then maybe we'll read each chapter on here, which I think would be pretty fun. Uh, so that's pretty exciting, and so be on the lookout for that. And so maybe we'll start reading some manga before that. Maybe a YouTube video for your completed top 50 at the end. Yeah, that would be interesting. That definitely could happen. And maybe I'll could even make a stream talking about like ones that were really close or things like that too. Like that would be fun to do, or some honorable mentions, things like that. But yeah, it's really fun to finally do this. I just needed to like start doing it because this I've been talking about my top 50 anime for like a year now, and so it's fun to be doing. And so yeah, I really appreciate everyone watching. I think that's it for me today. Happy New Year to everyone, and I hope you will see y'all in the next streams and videos.